Hello and welcome to the third video in a series discussing Chapter 8 of Government in America. We're focusing on political parties. In this video, we're going to compare the party in the electorate with the party organization and see how those two groups relate and how each one is sort of set up and described. Now, in terms of the party in the electorate, that's the voters and how they see themselves and who they connect with. There's two different terms to keep in mind here. One is party image. Party image is what's my image? How do I view the party? So when I think of the Democrats, what do I think of? When I think of the Republicans, what do I think of? That's the party image. Now, if I see myself as fitting in with how I view the party, then I will probably identify with that party. So I'd be willing to say I'm a Democrat because my idea of what the Democrats are fits who I am. So party identification or party ID is the party that a voter says he or she is connected with. This is not automatically the same as the party that he or she usually votes for. Many times, these are the same. People vote for the party that they identify with, but there are times where that's not the case, where for whatever reason, I identify as a Republican, but I find myself usually voting for the Democrats, or I find myself identifying with the Democrats, but I'm voting for the Republicans. If this is happening in any large amounts, it's usually a sign that something is shifting with the parties, that people are sort of getting ready to move. They still think of themselves as belonging to their old party, but they're starting to associate more and vote more with a new party. And that gets us into something that we'll talk about later, which is the notion of realignment, of people kind of shifting where they connect and where they line up. So that is where you can get a disconnect between party ID and party identification and actual voting behavior. Now, if you don't identify with a party, then you are calling yourself an independent voter. Now, the tradition in sort of media and political coverage is to kind of assume that independents and moderates are kind of the same thing, because they're the people who are in the middle, in between the liberals and the conservatives, between the Democrats and the Republicans. But this is not necessarily the case. You could agree with the Democrats or agree with the Republicans, but still not want to sign up or affiliate yourself with either party. So you could be an independent even if you're liberal or even if you're conservative. Also, you could be very liberal and think the Democrats aren't liberal enough, and so you're independent for that reason. Or you're conservative and you don't think the Republican Party is conservative enough, so you stay independent from that party. So what political scientists have found is that most independent voters do lean one way or the other. Lean is the term that gets used a lot. So you can be an independent, but you lean Democrat, so you usually vote for the Democrat. Or you lean Republican, you usually vote for the Republican. Now, there is a group of voters that genuinely goes back and forth. Sometimes they'll vote for the Democrat, sometimes they'll vote for the Republican. These voters are the voters that the parties are chasing after a lot of the time, because they figure if they can grab more of these voters that go back and forth, they'll be able to win. And these voters, because sometimes they swing this way and sometimes they swing that way, they're called swing voters, and they're very important. Now, in contrast to a swing voter, which is a term that describes someone's behavior from one election to another, all right, you also have the term ticket splitting or ticket splitters, which describes behavior during one particular election, all right. A ticket splitter is someone who goes in and, because there's usually more than one position that you're voting for, if you vote for a Democrat for one position but a Republican for another position, you are splitting your ticket. If you vote for all Democrats or all Republicans, they call that a straight ticket. So ticket splitters are people who, in any one given election, might vote for some Democrats and some Republicans. Swing voters, again, we're talking about their behavior between elections. In 2008, maybe they voted for Democrats, but in 2010, they changed their mind and voted for Republicans. That's swing voters. Now, in trying to get these voters to go to the polls and vote for their candidates, the parties have set up organizations, people whose job it is to sort of focus on keeping things organized. Now, American political parties are not super duper organized. They're much more free form. That's in part because of our system of government. Our parties and their organizations don't have ways to keep either their members or their government officials in line. So the party organizations are more about supporting the people that run more than kind of really holding everything together. Now, the parties are also divided much the way that our system of government is divided. We have national, state, and local governments. We have national, state, and local parties. Somewhat, maybe ironically, whereas we think of the national governments as being the most powerful, the national government's the most powerful in the United States. In terms of the political parties, it looks like the local parties tend to have more oomph and more power than the national parties. The local parties have a little bit easier time getting what they want. And in part, that's because the local parties still have some semblance of an organization set up that they can help people that help them and punish people that work against them. And this setup is what is referred to as a party machine. All right, if the party is really well organized and can really help its supporters and punish its opponents, we call that a party machine. And what gives party machines their power is that they have control of patronage jobs. Patronage jobs are jobs in the government that a government official can pick anybody that they want to do the job. So they'll give those jobs to their supporters, not to their enemies. Now, once upon a time, almost any job connected to the city or to the government was a patronage job. Teachers, patronage jobs. Sanitation workers, patronage jobs. Anything that the city was doing was kind of a patronage job. There are many fewer patronage jobs today because we've made changes to our government in order to try and cut down the influence of the party organizations. So the machines are weaker today than they used to be. But especially in local government, there tend to be a lot of jobs that people just don't pay a lot of attention to. Here in Philadelphia, we elect people every 4 years to jobs that, frankly, a lot of Philadelphia voters don't pay any attention to. We elect a register of wills every 4 years in Philadelphia. We elect a sheriff. We elect 3 city commissioners to help run our election system. And frankly, a lot of Philadelphia voters don't pay much attention um, to uh, to those positions. So the party machine, all right, that is paying attention is able to mobilize enough of its supporters to make sure that their people get elected to those jobs and then are able to kind of hire other people that support them. And that's what keeps the local machines running to a certain extent. Um, the Philadelphia Democratic Party can't really pick who they want to be the mayor anymore, but they're still pretty good at picking who's going to be the city commissioner or the register of wills, and that gives the machine still just a little bit of energy that they can do their thing. The trick is to make for a local machine to be able to do its thing, they have to be organized in the neighborhoods. They have to be able to connect to voters, offer the voters something, and sometimes it's really something simple. Just help with getting the trash picked up if that's the case, if that's something that they're having a problem with, or who do I call if I want to block off the street and have a block party or things like that. But that creates a relationship. The party machine can then leverage that relationship to get votes. Then when they get votes, they have jobs they can give out, and it just kind of keeps the cycle running. So it's much harder to build those kinds of relationships at the state and national level. But on the local level, the machine can still kind of get that thing running. So that's why a lot of observers think that the local machines and the local political parties have more power than their state and national counterparts. But those counterparts do still have some influence, especially because um, they have control over the nominating system. Remember, we said parties create links to the people by nominating the candidates who are going to run in the general election. And it's usually a state party that has a certain level of influence on that within a state, and then the national party helps set that up for national elections, especially the presidential election. Um, Now, primaries can have some different setups, so I want to just make sure that we're clear on the differences between those. In an open primary, then anybody can go. Doesn't matter whether you're a registered Republican or a registered Democrat or a registered Independent. You can go and pick which of the Democrats you like best or which of the Republicans you like best. So that's more open to the people. It gives the party, and especially the party in the electorate, a little bit less control. Some parties, including Pennsylvania, they prefer to have closed primaries. And in that case, only people who are registered with a certain party are allowed to vote in the primary for that party. So in Pennsylvania, only registered Republicans can vote in the registered Republican primary. Only registered Democrats can vote in the Democratic primary. So it kind of forces you to pick which side you want to be registered on so that you can decide which side you want to have an influence with. Finally, there's a blanket primary, which some states have set up to try and give the parties less influence. And in a blanket primary, you just put all the candidates together and have anybody can come vote for them, and whoever finishes in the top two, they move on to the general election. So you could get two Republicans voting against each other or two Democrats, going against each other in the general election. So it's important to keep those distinctions in mind until next time, when we'll talk a little bit more about the National Party Organization. I leave you with these questions for further thought.